afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Browns on the field and practicing out at the Greenbrier in West Virginia. The first workout of the training camp, and Amari Cooper going through some individual drills. Happy with his contract situation now that he's got some guaranteed money. Deshaun Watson working through some pre-practice drills as well. Browns only went about 50 minutes total. Was no offense versus defense. You see the offensive line loosening up and getting ready. Mike Vrabel down at the Greenbrier in the middle of everything, ready to go. Deshaun Watson getting loose and throwing to wide receivers. Always a good sign. Looking like he might be able to get things rolling on time. Watson finds Amari Cooper on this one, and always good sign to see that. Also Cooper working out in some individual drills, getting the timing down with Deshaun Watson. So after the practice, Amari Cooper was asked, was he satisfied with the resolution with the guaranteed money? And also, how tough was it not to be on the field during mandatory minicamp?
Of course. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love to practice, so definitely.
So was it hard to miss the minicamp?
Yeah, it was. It was. This is my 10th year, and I've never missed an OTA or minicamp, so it was really difficult.
Are you satisfied with the resolution, Amari?
Yeah, I mean, I'm content for sure. Obviously, I wanted more guarantees in the contract, just because I feel like I've earned it. But you can't always get what you wish for all the time. But it's definitely noted. If I have to go earn it, that's what I'll do.
With that, let's welcome in Quincy Carrier, Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. And Quincy, it's not surprising that Amari Cooper likes to practice. You and I were talking beforehand, before went on air, and I think you're absolutely right. I think Deshaun Watson plays well, Amari Cooper plays well. Those voidable years enable an extension to get done pretty easily if they so desire.
Yeah, I think the Browns just want to figure out what's their window going to be, right? Is their window going to be now and next year? And that's really dependent on Deshaun Watson playing at a high level this year and obviously being able to stay healthy and on the field. And if that's the case, he's playing at a high level, Amari Cooper's up there with him, then they're going to keep Amari Cooper around. I think it's really situational what could happen with Amari. If the Browns are in a situation where it looked like they might have to do a little bit of a soft reboot here, then they're probably going to move on from some of their older players. So that's where the Browns are. They're in this little bit of a limbo situation. It's kind of similar to where Baltimore was last year, where they were in a little bit of a limbo situation. But yeah, that's where they're at. I think there is a lot of room there, some incentives for both sides to sign that extension. Amari Cooper, he's an Alabama guy, and like Nick Saban says to them, you got to be where your feet are, and that's kind of the mentality a lot of those guys have. So there's no rush for Amari Cooper to get out of Cleveland. He likes it here. So it's just figuring out some of the smaller details, and also if this is going to be a team that's going to be useful for Amari Cooper over the next 3 years.
So we found out yesterday some of the players that are on the active non-football injury list as well as the physical unable to perform list. So the active non-football injury list, Nyheim Hines, Greg Newsome the second with a hamstring, Hines with that surgically repaired knee. Newsome with the hamstring, a little bit of a surprise. On the PUP list, DeAnthony Bell with the shin, Nick Chubb with a knee, Jack Conklin with a knee, Dalvin Tomlinson with a knee, and Jedrick Wills Jr. with a knee. Now the PUP list, they pass physical, they're good to go. They still count on the 90-man roster. So none of those are surprising, I suppose, but they are slow playing it with both Conklin and Wills.
Yeah, the Conklin thing I find a little bit more concerning than the Wills thing. Wills' injury and surgery happened pretty late into the season last year, so you kind of expect him to be here. With the Jack Conklin thing, I believe he got injured in the second or first game of the season. You would expect that he would be further along than he is right now, given that it's been almost a calendar year for him. So that would be a bigger concern for me. Jack Conklin not being ready yet. Maybe they're slow playing it. And also, the elephant in the room, and truly because he's the biggest guy on the roster, DeJuan Jones, right? This might be something where they're trying to politic it. So it's like, hey, DeJuan's the starter or DeJuan's not the starter. I don't know. I just keep an eye on the Jack Conklin thing because it's going to be awkward how they have to handle that. I mean, you're talking about a former All-Pro who a lot of people don't want to start anymore, not because he's terrible, but because DeJuan Jones is here as well.
All right, so I know you've addressed this on your show. Biggest storylines heading into training camp. When you look at it, what are you paying attention to early in camp?
Oh, yeah, you're going to pay a lot of attention to Jerry Jeudy, the wide receivers, and just how the skeleton of this new offense looks, right? What are the kind of motions they're using? How are they using these guys? Where are they putting these wide receivers in certain packages? I think those things are going to be very important early in camp. Now, once we get the padded practices, I really think we should focus on that offensive line. It's kind of been flying under the radar, but we just mentioned it. Jack Conklin's on the PUP list right now. Jed Wills is on the PUP list right now. DeJuan Jones just got off of the injured list, so he's back. But then you look at the offensive line and you're like, hey, Joe Bitonio's getting older. Wyatt Teller has not been Wyatt Teller for a couple of years from a level of play standpoint. And you start to wonder, is this offensive line going to hold up? Also, they have a new offensive line coach. And it's no longer Callahan, who was there for so many years and so well respected at that position. So I think once you put the pads on, I'm going to shift my focus to that offensive line because there's just a lot of questions there that are flying under the radar that I think are going to be important when the season starts.
Yeah, I mean, you just never know how quickly guys on the line you get to that 30, 32, 33, like Bitonio, you just wonder, does age catch up to you more quickly? So I agree with you wholeheartedly. What about rookies who you think could break out in training? Who do you think which of the rookies do you think are going to be the talk at camp? Maybe that's even a better way to ask it.
I know like Michael Hall is going to get talked about because Michael Hall is the one rookie on the roster. When you see him and he does something, he can flash and make you go, oh, wow. I remember watching him at the Senior Bowl, and he had the first 2 reps he had were some of the best reps I've ever seen. And I was like, wow, who is that guy? Then he kind of disappeared a little bit. But Michael Hall is going to give you those moments, right? He is capable of that. He's that level of an athlete. I think he's going to really stand out in a situation like in camp where if you put together a couple of clips, people are going to start to notice you. I think Cedric Tillman, he's not a rookie, but he's kind of a rookie, right? He's a young player who's trying to make his mark here in the NFL. I think he's going to be somebody who's going to be interesting to watch too, because he's going to be playing with Jameis Winston. And one thing with Jameis Winston, he will throw you the ball and let you make a play on it. And that's what we've been wanting to see out of Cedric Tillman since the Browns drafted him out of Tennessee. We know he had some issues being where he's supposed to be, and he certainly has to correct that. But we also want to see that upside, right? That 50-50 ball, go up and get it type style that we thought we were getting out of him. And with Jameis Winston being the backup quarterback and he's being set to get the reps with Jameis, well, you're going to want to see that dynamic play itself out.
So some news relative to the roster. UFL star tight end Briley Moore McKinney worked out yesterday for the Browns, according to his agent. Moore McKinney is 26 years old, 6'4", has spent time with the Titans as well. So a guy that's on the younger side, might be a developmental guy, could be a practice squad guy. They're going to take a look. They need... You and I have talked about depth at tight end. This might be a guy they bring in for camp, see what he does before cutdown day.
What this tells me is that the Browns are going to use tackle eligible as third tight end, right? Because Briley Moore is more of a receiving tight end. When you watch him in that offense with the Fred Keiss offense they run out there in D.C. So I think he's going to be a receiving tight end. We'll see if he's able to make a crack on the roster. But I think more importantly, what this tells you is that the Browns, they view the tight end as a receiving position, not necessarily a blocking position. It's a secondary responsibility to them because, again, they have not brought in like any blocking tight. Like, I can't tell you, like, have they ever brought in a blocking tight end under Andrew Berry? I don't think they have.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah, no, I'm not.
Harrison Bryant, Austin
No.
Hooper, David Njoku, they extended him. Jordan Atkins, like they are clearly been telling us for years, hey man, we don't see the tight end position as a primarily blocking focus one or one where we need to get a dedicated blocking tight end. That's where they're at with that position. I think it's very clear now.
Quincy Carrier, Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage, and I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at some secondary rankings, tell you where the Browns rank in the NFL. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch. Find the letters, make a match. Lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio Lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions in prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. This is from Warren Sharp, Sharp Football. Best secondaries for 2024 in the NFL. Has the Browns ranked number 1, Jets 2, Dolphins 3, Bears 4, Cowboys 5. Majority of the depth chart returns from a unit that allowed just 6.4 yards per attempt when the front 7 failed to generate pressure. League's third best rate. Quincy, I can't argue with anybody that says the secondary is best in the NFL. I think the corners and the safeties, both pretty deep. I want to see Juan Thornhill healthy because I think he played probably 80% last year with that calf injury.
And I think Juan Thornhill did a good job in run defense last year. I just don't think he was the playmaker in coverage that a lot of people hoped that he'd be. But it's important to remember, Juan Thornhill was never like an ace coverage player, even in Kansas City. So you just got to taper your expectations to what the player actually is. I don't think he's one of those guys who's going to be an elite pass coverage guy there. But they don't need him to be an elite pass coverage guy because you have these elite cover corners, right? You have Denzel Ward, you have Martin Emerson, and I think those two are elite. I think Denzel is kind of in a class in the kind of top shelf of corners in the NFL. But I would say Martin, I mean, like, it wouldn't shock me if he made a all-pro team this year, maybe second or third team, but it wouldn't shock me if he made an all-pro team. Then you have safeties, Grant Delpit. You also have, I think, underrated. This guy went out with injury about week 10 of the season last year, and I think we felt it with Ronnie McLeod going out. Very underrated piece to this secondary. And I think Cam Mitchell getting an opportunity in camp this year because of Greg Newsome being on the PUP list for a hamstring injury, non-football. I think we're going to get an extended look at him. And I like what we've seen from him so far. And I think that there's a lot of potential for him to kind of show up and be a high-level player. This secondary is not just deep. We ain't talk about Rodney Hickman, who stepped in at the starting role and did a good job there and probably will play more because he's more of a coverage safety than Juan Thornhill is. So maybe you rotate those guys in and out and kind of get creative with it if you feel comfortable with his development in year 2. And DeAnthony Bell, who I think is a nice little sneaky playmaker that you could find a couple ways to use throughout a game. The Browns have options upon options in that secondary, and they have really good players, and not just really good players, Dave, players that fit well together.
Yeah, and I've been critical of their ability to draft and develop wide receivers. Well, one thing they can draft and develop is cornerbacks. They have shown that, and they identify it, they develop them. I know you've addressed this. Talk a little bit more about Martin Emerson, just how smart he is.
Yeah, well, if you're looking for why the Browns can draft corners so well, just look at where they put those resources at with the corners, right? We're talking about third-round pick, first-round pick. It just makes me encouraged that, hey, if they do spend those resources on other positions, they will be better at it. And Martin Emerson is a great example of it, right? Third-round pick, was the first pick in that draft class. And what they have is the corner who we know is long and physical and strong. And I think we kind of glorify those traits about Martin Emerson. But what I think is underrated about him is that he's really smart. I mean, there was an interception he had in Jacksonville where he tracks this deep ball that Trevor Lawrence overthrows to the moon like Willie Mays in the outfield in the 1950s, like just tracking it, like, and then just catching it over the shoulder, getting up it and getting 20 yards on the return. He is somebody who has, I think, elite eyes for a corner. I think he has elite processing for a corner. He's not an elite speed corner guy, but he has length to make up for it. And he's strong too, and he's willing to be physical at the point of attack. And he has really soft hands for a corner. I mean, he can just get his hands on the interception, has really good instincts. I think he's a bit of a gem there, right? I think some people kind of overlooked him. Tall corner, stiff hips, doesn't run that fast, but they saw the IQ stuff, the football IQ stuff. And I think that's what allows Martin to be as physical as he is without the repercussions of being that physical. I mean, the Browns left him on an island a couple times last year, and he held up quite well against some pretty formidable names. I think Martin Emerson is really slept on as a corner in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm with you. He had me in one of the first preseason games of his rookie year where he just ripped the ball away from a wide receiver, just stole it from him. Let's take a look at this. Some news coming out of the Greenbrier. Mary Kay Cabot tweets this out from Kevin Stefanski's media availability. Kevin Stefanski announces that he will retain play calling duties this year. Which he should. I mean, you and I have talked about this. If he wanted to let Ken Dorsey call plays, that's fine. If he wants to call plays, I'm all for it.
Again, I feel like I've said this a million times on this show and on many other shows. Kevin was always going to retain the play calling ability because Kevin is ultimately the guy who has to sign off on the offensive play sheet, which means he's going to be the one that's responsible for calling those plays because he is responsible for what is on that play sheet. I think so much gets made out of the play calling. The play calling, I don't think, is the root issue. I think the root issue, if you have an issue with how the Browns attack a game, isn't the order in which they call the plays. It's the game plan that they put on that call sheet, right? And when you're talking about a game plan, when you're talking about putting a game plan together, you cannot deny that Kevin Stefanski has a great game plan person, right? Like we saw his ability at the start of quarters last year, at the start of games last year. Also, when you look at his numbers as a head coach with so many different quarterbacks since 2020 and closing halves and closing games with these drives that he structures up, he's really good at that. He's a great game plan guy. And that's who you want in charge of making the game plan for the team. And if he's in charge of the game plan, you want him to call the plays for logistical reasons, right? Because you don't want an argument on the headset about, oh, who's going to call this? Or maybe we should go here or that. You want there to be somebody in charge to say, hey, no, we're doing this. Right. And this is it. I'm the only one with veto power. We're running this. That's it. Let's get the play call in so we can get some time on the clock so Deshaun can make some audibles or some checks if he sees something at the line of scrimmage. But what you don't want is, oh, we're snapping the ball at 5 seconds. Remember the Hugh Jackson era, Dave? Remember how often they would get to the line of scrimmage with like 3 seconds left on the clock? And then poor Deshaun Kaiser has to snap the ball and pretty much blind read into an NFL, and you wonder why he throws a million interceptions, right? This is what you try to avoid because Hugh was having all these arguments on the headset about what they about to do and who's in charge and all of this and making points. No, you just want to get that play call in. You want a smooth operation. And with Kevin being the play caller, it's going to be a smooth operation. It's been a smooth operation. And the only time you really see a play caller change, and I think this is an important thing for people to know, the only time you see a play caller change is not because the quality of plays being called. It's because of stuff like that. How many timeouts are you taking on offense because you're discombobulated? How much time are you wasting because you can't get the play call in? When that stuff happens, the play caller does change. But if that's not happening, there's no reason for the play caller to change.
You had to go all Hugh Jackson on me there. That was a horrible flashback. All right, some more news from Mary Kay relative to what Kevin Stefanski's telling us. So Greg Newsome underwent hamstring surgery today. They're hoping to have him back by the opener. Dalvin Tomlinson will have a knee scope tomorrow. So already kind of some concerning news relative to a couple of pretty big-time starters for the defense.
Yeah, and there's going to be an opportunity here for Siaki Ika, right? Because he's the only one on the roster you can think could do some of the stuff that Dalvin Tomlinson does from a body build standpoint. Now, if we get to camp and Siaki Ika still ain't getting run with the twos or the ones, then be concerned if you're Siaki Ika, because I don't know what it's going to take to get you on the field at that point. But when it comes to the Greg Newsome injury, I think this is going to give us a good look at Cam Mitchell. It's unfortunate Greg Newsome can't be out there, but Greg's been on this defense long enough that once he's back healthy, he'll be able to plug and play, fit in where he needs to fit in. Dalvin, wish he was here. Really need him to have a better year than he had last year. So if taking care of his health is something that can get him closer to that, then you'll sacrifice what you get out of him in training camp. And the Browns got a lot of young defensive tackles they want to give runs. So, they'll just use this time to evaluate those guys.
All right, before we go to break, let's talk a little bit about a couple of offensive linemen. I know you've addressed this on your show as well. So what do you think of Ethan Posick and DeJuan Jones? We'll lump them together.
I like Ethan Posick and DeJuan Jones. I think Ethan's probably the best offensive lineman quiet is kept on the roster right now as far as from a consistency standpoint. When he gets his hands on you, he does not move, right? He is pretty strong there. The issue with Ethan is that he's not the best mover in space. I think he's a little bit clumsy in space. But if you just keep him, 2-jet, 300-jet, and he just slides left, right, I think he'll be fine there. When it comes to DeJuan Jones, DeJuan is full of all the potential in the world. I mean, you talk about somebody who has the length to get away with any issues that he has with his base. I think his base got better over the course of last year, and he has good hand placement at times, and he was able to just hand fight with guys and just beat them there. You can't buy or you can't learn what DeJuan Jones has, and I think he has that. Plus, he has the capability of being a really skilled tackle in the future. And it's no lie. I mean, we all agree with this. DeJuan Jones is the future of the Browns offensive line as it is right now.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll turn our attention to the receiving core. Where does it rank? Sports4CLE will be right back talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. This from Warren Sharp Football. Best receiving core. So he's going wide receiver and tight end for 2024. He's got the Niners 1, Eagles 2, Bears 3, Dolphins, Texans 4 and 5. Seahawks, Bengals, and Vikings. Rams 9, Lions 10. He has a tie with the Packers and the Titans at 11. Then the Browns, Jets, and Cowboys are 13, he says. Amari Cooper remains legitimate number one weapon, ranked 7th in the league, 86.4% catch rate on catchable targets at 10 or more yards per Sports Info Solutions. Yeah, middle of the road. You know what? That's probably pretty fair. A ranking for the Browns relative to Cooper and Cooper, Moore, and Njoku, and Judy. I don't have any issue with that at all. Yeah.
13 out of 32 is well above average. And I think you just want to be well above average in that room. You have some room to improve, right? Jerry Jeudy, if he shows some growth here that he did not show in Denver, that dramatically changes, I think, how people view that room as well. And Elijah Moore, still a young player, still somebody who I don't think was put in the right position. I thought he played really well at the end of last season as well. He could step up too, in addition to Jerry Jeudy. And then now you have a really different view of how this room could break out. But I think 13 is a fair place to put it. And it's important to remember, you don't need the number. I know we have so many position groups where the Browns are number one at, but we don't need to have the number one ranked room everywhere. But where you do want to be is at least average or above average in a lot of categories. And they're above average here. And, they're not spending $60 million for 2 wide receivers just to be ranked number 4.
All right, along those lines, this is from NFL notifications. Breaking rumor. I'm not quite. Every time I say breaking rumor, okay, sure.
Twitter.
The Patriots and Browns are two teams that are expected to go all in on wide receiver T. Higgins next offseason when free agency starts. Per a source, both teams believe he's a wide receiver one, looking for a long-term solution at the position. Now, he's with the Bengals. They're not going to re-sign him and Jamar Chase because they don't have the money to do that. The other thing I would say, T. Higgins has the same agent as Deshaun Watson. So, and Andrew Berry and the agent there have a history of being able to come to agreements on some things.
Yeah, I think the Browns like T. Higgins. I think the Browns see T. Higgins as a number one receiver. The question here is, do the Browns feel like, one, a wide receiver, any wide receiver, is worth over $30 million? I don't know if the answer to that is necessarily yes. I don't think there's a lot of things that scream that answer is yes. So it might be a situation like, yeah, we like T. Higgins, and we'll get T. Higgins if he costs $26 million or $28 million, and that's not going to be what T. Higgins signs for. So that might be where it comes from. Another thing of note is, hey, do the Browns think it makes sense to pay $30 million and $40+ million for a quarterback? Because some teams would think, hey, I'm paying top money for a top quarterback. I don't need to do these things at wide. It's what the Bengals are doing, right? They're not spending that money at wide receiver because it's, to them, would be better allocated on other parts because they have Joe Burrow and they pay Joe Burrow a ton of money to elevate these guys at wide receiver. So while I do think that there is some smoke there, are the Browns interested in T. Higgins? Absolutely. Is T. Higgins a good wide receiver? Absolutely. Does T. Higgins fit what the Browns do? Absolutely. But there are some other questions I think, don't get asked at this point when it's just a report of a rumor.
A breaking rumor, though.
A breaking rumor, right?
Exactly.
The full Twitter of it all that get kind of ignored. And I think the reality is, I'm not 100% sure that the Browns feel like wide receivers are worth $30+ million. And I wonder how much that sentiment grows among the NFL as we see teams pay $30 million for wide receivers, but still not end up near the Super Bowl picture. Like, if the Texans don't have a great year this year, or if the Vikings don't have a great year this year, what is it going to take for GMs to go, hold on, wait a minute? Yeah. Why are we doing this? I think it's something, it feels like a bubble to me.
It will be interesting to see, without question. This is interesting as well. This is from Pro Football Network. Best kick return option for all 32 teams under the NFL's new kickoff rules. For the Browns, Nyheim Hines, arguably the best kick returner in the NFL, which he put on display last year for the Bills. Averaged 29.2 yards per kick return in Buffalo, including 2 touchdown returns. Clear favorite to win the job in Cleveland. Quincy, that is overlooked about why the Browns went out and got Nyheim Hines. They knew the kickoff returns were going to be much more important.
Yep. And it's going to be interesting watching this year specifically of this new kickoff rule, because I don't know if you're a fan of sitcoms, but sometimes sitcoms will have a pilot and the first episode don't look nothing like that second episode. Like, you watch the first episode of like Star Trek, it ain't even got Captain Kirk on it. Like, it ain't got no William Shatner, nothing. It's got a whole different crew on it. And I feel like that's what this first run of the kick return is going to be with these new rules, is we just don't know what to do. Like, what you're going to see week 1 is going to be completely different from what you're going to see week 10, and it's probably going to take us a whole year to settle into what we actually going to do with this kick return thing, because it's just so new. It hasn't been tested. The only time it was done was in the XFL in 2021, and they got their season shorted by COVID, so it's not like we even got a full season out of the XFL doing it. We got like 7 games out of it. This is going to be the Wild West on this kick return thing, and I think there's going to be a lot of interesting theories, a lot of different mindsets about how to attack this. And it might be that the Browns think Nyheim Hines is going to be the answer for that. But like your favorite television show's pilot, hey, we thought they were a lead, but we went out and got Michael J. Fox instead, right? Like it might just be one of those situations where we just got to move on the fly because it wasn't working. And I think we just got to be prepared to move on everything with this kickoff return, because I think it's being underestimated how little we know about how this going to work out.
So Nyheim Hines has a new nickname, Captain Kirk.
Well, actually, Captain Pike. It might be Captain Pike. We don't know.
All right. This one from before I let you go. This is from FanDuel. According to FanDuel from Sports Illustrated. Teams' odds to win the AFC North. They got the Ravens almost 41%. The Bengals at almost 38%. Browns just over 18%. And the Steelers 11%. And again, I think that's awfully low for the Browns. And again, I know the question comes down to quarterback play. That's the only reason you could possibly have it like that. I would ask, I look at the Ravens, new defensive coordinator, a lot of new guys. They haven't figured out their passing game. I know Zay Flowers had a good year. Mark Andrews, is he going to be this? There's just a lot of questions everywhere.
I think also when it comes to like probabilities like this, when we don't know what the formula is, it could also be the Browns got an 18% probability to win a division because of historical data, right? Like the Browns are coming out of a mound of just insanely negative historical data that would indicate that they're not a team that's going to be likely to win or get first place. So I always think of that whenever we get these probability readings coming out of like who can win the division. It's probably got to do something with that, because Baltimore has demonstrated that they're a franchise capable of winning division. Same thing with Cincinnati, but the Browns have not done it since coming back from '99, and that's going to hurt your probability, no matter how much it makes sense on paper outside of those things, to be able to do something like that. So I think that probably plays a role into it. Maybe Deshaun Watson plays a role into it, but I think the health of Joe Burrow is just as questionable as the health of Deshaun Watson at this point. Joe Burrow has missed the end of the season, 2 times so far in his career, and he's missed significant portions of the season, 3 out of 4 of his years in the NFL. So it's interesting. Ultimately these probabilities are probabilities. We'll see what happens at the end of the day, but it's just a fun thing to look at.
Yeah, don't go getting all rational on me. Quincy Carrier, as always, really good stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
Thank you.
Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff. Untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lute and scratch, find the letters, make a match, lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio Lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions in prizes, don't you know?
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, guys. I'm calling from Rochester, New York. You guys got to be kidding me. I just saw Stefanski mic'd up with our Jets loss debacle. Every loss means in the NFL you can't get that game back. It's almost like missing an extra point. You're always chasing it. I disagree. You have to be a little more upset than that. I agree with that caller, Jim, about holding people more accountable. I think that'll work a little bit better than what I just saw. Thanks, guys. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. So, Trevor, he's referring to the game 2 years ago where the Browns lost they had like a 0.9% chance of losing, where actually Joe Flacco threw a long touchdown and they gave up a bunch of points late. I don't know. You're going to have to tell me an NFL coach that sits there and screams at his players, because I don't think that exists anymore. There have been a couple of guys that have continually been upset with the way Kevin Stefanski's demeanor is. And my response is always, you got to be who you are. And professional athletes that are making hundreds of millions of dollars generally don't respond to people screaming at them.
Yes, I would agree with you. I think that a lot of people see how Nick Saban did things at Alabama and just other college coaches, and they really get in the faces of these college kids. And I think that can work sort of as a tactic when you're dealing with younger players and college athletes. But you're right. When you start dealing with grown men, guys in their late 20s, early 30s who have been playing this game a long time, not a lot of guys respond to screaming at that point. So, look, Stefanski's, I think his track record, quite literally, speaks for itself as somebody who has been a head coach of the year candidate multiple times now. He's gotten a lot out of a good Browns roster. I know that fans are frustrated, right? That they've wanted more, though, from this Cleveland team. And I think that they've wanted more from certainly the guys that are getting paid a lot of money on the team. They want to see postseason results. And I think everybody's frustrated when that's not the case. But everybody looks to sort of point the finger and blame a little bit when things don't go well. It's hard to really say, yes, this is what we should be getting mad about, is Stefanski's reaction. Because in reality, Stefanski, I didn't see the clip, but it sounds like he was just like, hey, we blew it. I mean, that's about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do other than just not do it again.
It was basically, we got to own. That wasn't good. We got to own it. I didn't see the clip. It's a couple years old. But the other thing is, you can't live and die with each game, because you got to get, end of the day, you got to get on to the next one, or it becomes a 2-game losing streak and a 3-game. And unfortunately, that year it kind of did.
And I think that that's just like you said. I think that that's the right mentality. You can't let the loss, or even how you handled the loss, linger into the next week. And I think, kind of to your point, if you really start berating the guys, and if you were, like screaming, if you were being a little more passionate, okay, sure, that could show that, we're not going to take losing around here. But in a way, like, that could also be like, man, the players could be like, I don't like how you handled that. And that could be something that lingers for much longer than that. And instead, Stefanski, you don't want to be too even-keeled about it, right? Because you don't want to be comfortable with losing. But as long as he addressed the team in the locker room, was like, look, I mean, flat out, it's not going to fly anymore. Like, how we handled that, from my position all the way down, that's not the results that we want. That's not the process we want. We can't go out and we can't execute that way. And so as long as you do that, I don't think you need to be, overly in guys' faces. They get it. They're paid millions of dollars to play these games. You don't have to necessarily remind them with high volume of your voice. They get it. You just got to be able to say, hey, we just cannot let this fly again. It's got to be better next week. End of story. Move it on. We're getting to practice tomorrow.
And the other thing that I would say, these days, you don't know how they keep everything in-house, so to speak. So relative to holding players accountable, there's different ways to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I completely agree with that.
All right. One rookie from each AFC team with the most to gain at training camp. This from PFF.com. Browns' Jamari Thrash developed a poor habit of dropping passes in college, 16 of them. from 2021 to 2023. Displayed sticky hands in rookie minicamp. Rest of his profile screams NFL starter, ranked in the 75th percentile or better in all 5 stable receiving metrics highlighted in PFF's 2024 NFL Draft Guide. 99th percentile single coverage grade in 2023. There's some talk about a broken hand as well during that time, which could have figured into it. But when you look at Thrash, what do you see?
I'm really excited about Thrash being a part of this team. And, this is somebody who consistently was a deep threat winner when he was at Louisville. And I think that he was able to win without having like crazy elite speed. Like, he's not this Deshaun Jackson type where, man, I mean, if you let him free off the line of scrimmage, he's going to get by you no matter what. You got no chance. He sort of had to continue to get deep and create that separation with a little bit of savviness as well. He's a good athlete, but the way that he naturally creates that separation deep down the field is what makes him a good, deep vertical threat. And we saw that at the Senior Bowl as well. It felt like every time there was a big pass deep down the field for a guy to catch it, it was going to Jamari Thrash, at least certainly at the early parts of the week. And anytime you can stand out in the early parts of the week, like that to me means a lot as well. So, Thrash is somebody who this team has some vertical threat options. Like Amari could certainly be a vertical threat. You're hoping that Jerry Jeudy could be that as well. But Jamari Thrash, I think, could also be in the mix to be a player who could be a nice depth guy, especially when you go to 4 wide receivers, 5 wide receivers, when you really need to start stretching the ball, or in case these guys go down with injury. He is somebody who I'm excited to have on this Browns roster. I think he can play well.
So I know you've done a lot of study on the rookies as a whole. Who are some of the other rookies that you really like that the Browns drafted or signed?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, of course, when you don't have a first-round pick because there's not an obvious one, or you go like, oh, okay, this guy's going to start right away. But, Zach Zinter is somebody who I think is a really nice, versatile piece for them along the interior offensive line. I know it's a really good interior offensive line already, but certainly if any of those guys go down, Wyatt Teller, Joel Bitonio, if any of those players, happen to go down with injury, you're hoping that Zinter, who's recovering from injury himself, is healthy enough to be able to be a nice depth piece for them, not just this year, but also moving forward too. It doesn't always just have to be about the rookie season. I just like the fact that he's in there because, like I said, if those guys go down for a short period of time, I feel like he can fill in for them. Michael Hall Jr., I think, gives him a little bit of juice on the interior defensive line. They've got some guys that can really, hold the run really well. I think Dalvin Tomlinson, of course, Shelby Harris, those are guys who are veterans in this league. They know how to hold the line of scrimmage, be good in run defense. But, Michael Hall Jr., he has a really devastating kind of arm over or swim move where he's able to get past his interior offensive lineman, get into the backfield and get a lot of tackles for loss. He was able to do that at Ohio State over the last couple of years. And then they got a good linebacking group, but I like Bookie Watson. I really do. I think that he is a good linebacker for them, a good depth piece. He was a big part of Mississippi State's defense. There is the centerpiece there. He's played a lot of snaps over the last couple of years. And I think at the very least, you got a special team stud that's really going to help this team out. So on top of Thrash, those are a handful of guys that are standing out to me of good depth contributors in their rookie year, and we'll see what they can be in years 2 and 3 of those rookie contracts.
Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, best offseason decision by the Browns. Trevor wrote an article about it. We'll tell you who he thinks the Browns' best offseason decision is. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus, co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Trevor, you wrote you wrote an article, best off-season moves and decisions by each of the AFC teams. For the Browns, you said re-signing Zadarius Smith. What did you like about that? Why do you think that makes so much sense?
Oh, man, I thought Darius was great last year. He was a really good signing for them, and to get him in the same defensive line as Myles Garrett, you saw how well they were able to complement each other. And anytime Garrett's commanding that sort of attention on one side, well, if you get an experienced pass rusher like Darius who really knows how to get in the backfield, it's such a benefit to you. And I think that Darius's efficiency was even forcing teams and offensive lines to go, wait a second. We can't give all of our attention over to Garrett, and that obviously helps him have an unbelievable year last year. So Garrett has been somebody who has been defensive player of the year worthy almost every single year over the last 5 years, right? And last year specifically, it was his best year yet. Incredibly high pass rush win percentage, very, very high PFF pass rushing grade. And the reason why I think is because he got more one-on-ones. Now, I don't necessarily have the stats in front of me to back that up, but it felt like that was the case because when you have Za'Darius on the other side, you just can't allocate as many blocks, as many eyes to Myles Garrett as you would obviously want to. So for me, in order to continue to have that defense playing as high of a level as it was last year, you need Garrett to continue to not just be the focal point of that defensive line. I think bringing back Za'Darius was a key piece of that. So I love that offseason move from Cleveland.
So this one's from the Bleacher Report, ranking NFL true franchise players to build around. Number 1, Patrick Mahomes, hard to argue with that. Number 2, Lamar Jackson. 3, Josh Allen. So you got quarterbacks at the top. 11, Myles Garrett. Brown's biggest star will turn 29 in December, meaning that building around him for the next decade isn't likely, though still theoretically possible. That said, few players in the NFL can change a game in an instant quite like Garrett can. When you look at that, he isn't really slowing down. You mentioned it. First time he won Defensive Player of the Year for the first time last year.
I think that despite his age, you can expect to get a handful more just absolutely elite takeover years from him. And then as he will decline with age, like Father Time gets everybody. I don't think it's going to be this steep fall off for him. I think that he is going to be able to have a longer sustained career, even into his mid 30s, because he is that talented. So yeah, of course, when you go through these exercises and you say, oh, players to build around, you love picking the guys that are in their early to mid 20s because you get so many more years out of them. That's truly, you are building a franchise around them. But I would say that sometimes we emphasize that a little bit too much, right? As a draft guy, I can fully admit that I've heard way too many times in my life, oh, you draft this player, you don't have to worry about him for the next 10 years. How many times do you actually get that? It's very, very, very few. And instead, if you tell me I'm getting 5 more elite years out of Myles Garrett from what we've seen from him over the last 5 years, I will absolutely take that in that top 12 of those selections of players there.
I'm with you. This is from the USA Today Sports and their AFC playoff predictions. So they have the Chiefs, number 1 seed, 13-4. They have the Jets, 12-5. Super Bowl winners over the Packers, which, okay. Colts, 3, Bengals, 4, Bills, 5, Jaguars, 6, and the Browns, 7th in the AFC. In the North, they have the Bengals winning the division, the Browns finishing 2nd ahead of the Ravens and Steelers, with the Ravens and the Steelers missing the playoffs. The AFC North, I think, is brutal, and I think you could argue any of those 4 teams could finish first, and any of those 4 teams could finish 4th, and based on what your biases are, you could have a discussion about it.
Yeah, the division's absolutely brutal. Like, I do feel bad for Browns fans because this team has put out so much great talent that it feels like if they were in like any other division, they would have at least been able to have a little bit more postseason success, a little bit more hope. But it's just, it's brutal. It's brutal every single year, and it's going to be this upcoming season. Now, I think the Steelers are the most likely team to probably finish in the back of the division at number 4, just because there's uncertainty at quarterback. But certainly if Russell Wilson is able to bounce back with Arthur Smith as his offense coordinator now in Pittsburgh, we know that Mike Tomlin ain't going to go away quietly, right? He has yet to finish with a below 500 record in his career as a head coach. So we know that they're going to be a solid team at the very worst, or an annoying team maybe for certainly the other teams in the AFC North. But yeah, it's sort of a coin flip. I think that, unfortunately, I know Browns fans are sick of hearing this, but their ceiling is just what Deshaun's ceiling is. If we see Houston Texans Deshaun Watson, yeah, I think this team is absolutely a front runner to win this division and make a deep playoff run. But if we don't, then certainly the teams of Baltimore and Cincinnati could overtake them, and maybe they're still getting a wild card spot as that third best team in the division, a team to win 10 games, maybe 11 games, something like that. But the ceiling is just going to go as their quarterback goes. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and health will always play a factor because the physical nature that all of these teams play with as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's tough. Every single divisional game, I think, for every team in the league is always sort of you circle it a little bit on your calendar, but it just feels like there's so much history between all of these teams every year. Like they do have this like old school, almost college football rivalry type of a feel. I feel as though the NFC North is one of the few divisions in the NFL where you get sort of that long history rivalry with a lot of these teams. So yeah, there's no doubt about it that I think that these teams are always going to give each other their best because there's a lot of pride on the line when these teams match up.
Trevor Sikkema, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Trevor.
Appreciate it. Anytime.
Trevor Sikkema, make sure you check him out. PFF, he is the co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Always really good NFL coverage from PFF. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Guardians. Guardians beat reporter Paul Hoynes joins us. Sports4CLE. He'll be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lute and scratch. Find the letters, make a match. Lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio Lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions of prizes, don't you know?
We turn our attention to the Guardians, wrapping up a series with the Tigers after the All-Star break. And let's welcome in Paul Hoynes. So, Hoynesy, since the All-Star break, Guardians have been shut out by Dylan Cease, scored 1 run against Michael King, 1 run against Tarek Skubal, no runs against Jack Flaherty. I know you've talked about this on your podcast. With this offense, what is it? Can they compete against good pitching?
You know, Dave, I think they can. They did it in the first half. I think this is I hate to sound like a cliche, but I think every team goes through this. But, it is a concern because, the division, they haven't won anything yet. And, Kansas City and the Twins are right behind them. The Tigers have given them everything they could ask for. But, to me, this thing started, just before the break when they went to Detroit for that 4-game series. They lose 3 out of 4. Then they go to Tampa and face good pitching and lose 2 out of 3. And they really kind of haven't really got their legs back under them, even coming out of the break.
Yeah, and I get it. They're young, but you know what? The playoffs doesn't care how young you are. You got to go and you got to beat the teams that qualify for it. A young guy who's been intriguing has been Jhonkensy Noel. What have you thought about Noel? And do you think the Guardians are kind of being cautious with him to make sure they're putting him in positions where he can succeed early?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Dave. I think also, we've seen him start maybe 3-4 games in a row now. So that's encouraging because, you've got a guy that's hit 5 home runs in about 17, 18 games, and he can't get off the bench. So he showed a couple nights ago the ability to, hit right-handers. He's, they have been playing him mostly against lefties, but now hopefully he can, get some more regular playing time because this guy's got pop. You've seen him swing. He's 6'3", he's 260 pounds. Like if you're a pitcher, he scares you to death when he steps in the box.
Yeah, and the one thing you want is you want to make sure he doesn't chase. That's what they had him work on. When he figured it out at AAA, he ended up hitting 300. As long as he stays in the strike zone, he is he can clobber a fastball.
And he's a pretty good. He's a much better outfielder than I thought.
Yeah, I would agree. Much better athlete, too. Big guy that can move a little bit. All right, Tuesday, trade deadline's at 6. Not a lot of movement yet anywhere in the big leagues. Are you getting a sense that the Guardians feel like they're going to be able to get any deals done? And I ask you that. Take a look. This was Chris Antonetti from a media availability from before today's afternoon game. Actively exploring opportunities to try to improve the team. We always hear that. Hard to predict what will come. We know that. Important to remember, no matter what happens at the trade deadline, the group of guys in the clubhouse are the ones that have put us in position to win the amount of games that we have, and our success in the second half is going to continue to be determined by that group of guys. All of that is very true, but man, they need. I was joking with you beforehand. Part of me thought, Stephen Vogt didn't realize, sixth inning came. He didn't have to take his starter out yesterday. That, Bobby was cramping. He didn't realize, we can leave the starter in the sixth.
Yeah, I think they know they've got to make a move, Dave. Whether it's in the rotation or it's in the lineup, the position player group, they know they've got to do something. And we've always seen them act when they were in position to really win the division and make a strong move in the postseason. I think they're going to do the same thing here. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but I cannot see them sitting on their hands and let this deadline pass and kind of leaving this team die on the vine. I just don't see that.
No, I would agree, and I would argue you need a starter and you need somebody that you can bat fifth, sixth, seventh, middle of the order guy, because you need this offense to get jump started. All right, these are trade candidates who could fit with the Guardians. This from MLB.com. Also took a couple of them from the Last Word on Sports. So Eric Fetty, White Sox, 7-3, 2.98 ERA. 7.5 million prorated on this year's contract left. Also 7.5 million next year. That one would be that's going to cost you, but that would be choice number one. John Gray, he's 32. He's 5-4, 3.73 ERA, which is pretty good. Signed through 2025. 13 million prorated this year. 13 million next year. That becomes a question. Kikuchi from the Blue Jays, 33 years old, free agent this winter, 4-9, 454, so only 10 million prorated this year. Chris Bassett played collegiately at the University of Akron, signed through 2025, 8-8, 3.71 ERA, 22 million prorated this year and next year. I can't see that happening. And then Jack Flaherty's intriguing, 28 years old. We saw him up close and personal, maybe a little too much of him a couple days ago. 7-5, 3.13 ERA, 14 million prorated left on this contract. And then position players, we've talked about this guy. Rooker is just killing it. 2.91 ERA, 23 homers, 69 runs batted in. His OPS is over 1,000 as well. Lane Thomas, 28 years old, arbitration eligible next 3 years. 246 is average, 8 homers, 39 runs batted in, 26 stolen bases. 5.45 million this year. Rooker is 750, and then he goes into arbitration. Of all those, number one would have to be Fetty, I would think. And I don't know what it would take, but I'd probably be willing to go pretty high.
Yeah, I think Fetty's a good choice. I like Kikuchi. From what I've heard, they are looking for more of a Reynolds kind of pitcher. Rental to make a rental deal where they don't inherit too much money for 2025. That they could just add to this group right now. So Fetty, I think that wouldn't break the bank. Kikuchi's a free agent at the end of the year, and of course they have that relationship with Shapiro and Ross Atkins in Toronto, the guys that are running Toronto now. We've talked about Rooker and Flaherty. If you could get Flaherty, Dave, I think that would be Christmas in July, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because everybody needs starting pitching. So I don't think any of the big names that people are throwing out there, Skubal or the like, Crochet even, Crochet maybe. Scooble's not going anywhere. The Tigers have some young players that, he's under control, and I think they can compete coming up. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to cost a lot, and we'll see what the Guardians can do. What about Class A? I mean, every time I know you've written about it. You've seen a lot of Guardians / Indians baseball. What about the year Class A is putting together here?
Yeah, the closest I can remember or even kind of compare it to is Jose Ramirez in '95, Dave, when I think Ramirez went, what was it, 45 for 46, some crazy,
yeah.
Jose
Mesa.
Jose Mesa, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, and when he would finish second in the MVP voting, and I think Class A has a chance to win the MVP this year, if depending on how things go for Cleveland over the last 2.5 months. But I mean, he is so dominant, and we've seen him, the last 2 years where he's pitched well, he's thrown 100 miles an hour, but he's never been this efficient. And he's never been, Doc Edwards, the old Indians manager, used to say, good closers come into a game and they immediately calm everything down. It's like you come into a storm and he just brings calm with him. And that's what Class A does. He just, no matter what the situation, he just, boom, he comes in the game, things calm down, and it's over in 3 outs.
Yeah, without question. And, you mentioned Mesa. That's one of the reasons they made it to the World Series that year. We won't mention how that ended with Jose Mesa.
but no, I mean,
yeah.
And he was a converted starter.
Right.
Class A's been basically a closer or a reliever his whole career.
All right, 5-game lead on the division here in late July. What do the Guardians have to do in August and September to make sure they win the AL Central and then, make a little bit of a run come playoff time?
Yeah, Dave, they don't have to win a lot, but they just have to win enough because of where they are. I think if you could play a little bit above 500, the Guardians are going to be okay, but they have really a tough schedule. I think we were talking about this before. I think it's maybe, based on win-loss, the winning percentage, they might have the second toughest schedule in baseball, coming out of the break.
Yeah, and again, they need just a couple of reinforcements. Gut feeling, do you think they end up making a trade?
Yes, definitely. I think I do not think they can't stand still here. They can't sit on their hands. They've got to do something.
Paul Hoynes, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Hoynesy.
All right, Dave.
Paul Hoynes, make sure you check him out. Guardians beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Always really an insightful Guardians coverage. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.